At the turn of the first millennium BC, Punt vanishes from Egyptian records and trade with Egypt likely declined as well. However, interactions between South Arabia and the northern highlands of Eritrea and Ethiopia intensified, with merchants and craftsmen exchanging goods and ideas, particularly among the nobility. Around 800 BC, a new kingdom emerged in parts of the highlands of Eritrea and Ethiopia, known as Da'amat. Rulers were referred to as either Mukaribs or Maliks, and they wielded both political and religious authority. One of the earliest known rulers of Da'amat was Wern Huwakt, whose name appears at 3 different archaeological sites. The first inscription was discovered at Seglemen, approximately 10 kilometers west of Axum. Engraved on a limestone slab, it records that the victorious king Wernhut commissioned the construction of a temple dedicated to the god Horbas, a deity associated with prophecy. The inscription also notes his paternal and maternal lineage. The king then offers thanks to several deities: Asta, the celestial god linked to Venus, irrigation and rainfall; Horbas once more; Almaka, the chief lunar god and divine protector; Dathimyam, goddess of the sun and fertility; Datu Badan, goddess of nature; and Wad, the god of love and harmony. Further north at Yeha, he also commissioned another inscription on an altar. This might have been inside the Grand Temple of Yeha, discussed in the previous video. A final inscription was found at Keskesa, carved into a stele that once stood 4.5 meters tall, possibly built to commemorate a significant event. Following the reign of Wernhut, a ruler named Ardm, possibly vocalized as Radium, ascended to power in the kingdom of Da'amat. He is the first known ruler to bear the title Mukarib, signifying combined religious and administrative authority. Radium hailed from the Surit tribe, one of Da'amat's dominant clans. The other major ruling group was the Igd, likely referring to the Gaze or Agazian tribe, which later monarchs claimed descent from. Inscriptions mentioning Radium have been discovered at 2 sites, the first being on a large incense burner at Adi Akawe. At Adi Akawe, 2 inscriptions were discovered, both containing the same details. They begin by naming Radium, Mukarib of Da'amat, from the tribe of Shrit. He claims paternal descent from the same lineage as the previous ruler, Wernhut, though his maternal line differs. Radium then states that the incense burners were built for a certain lord named Ab, whose identity remains unclear, possibly a governor under the Mukarib's authority in the Adi Akawe region. The inscription also features a motif found in other royal inscriptions, a reference to the east and west. The east represents the offspring of mixed Sabaean and Cushitic descent, who identified as the Red People, while the west refers to the Nilo-Cushitic population that inhabited mostly the western region of Da'amat, and were described as the Dark People. Finally, another inscription was found at Keskesa, Eritrea. Here Radium had erected a stela mentioning himself. After the reign of Radium, his son Wern, possibly vocalized as Weren, ascended to the throne of Da'amat. His reign is attested by a recently excavated temple at Mukaburgawa, located in the Adi Akawe region. At Mukaburgawa, a large temple complex was uncovered measuring 35 meters in width and 26 meters in length. It featured a central gate and a front courtyard. The main shrine room housed an altar made of stone blocks, used for ritual offerings. Notably, the altar included 2 bullhead-shaped spouts, one on the inside into which ritual liquids were poured, and another on the outside where the liquid flowed out and into a ground-level drainage channel. At the top of the altar is an inscription referencing King Waren, stating that he commissioned the altar to Almaka after being appointed head of the temple at Yeha. This provides key insight into the dual role of Da'amat's kings, who held both political and high religious authority. It also suggests that the temple at Yeha was likely the most important temple in the kingdom, and likely the religious capital. Also found within the temple was a statue of a woman, which scholars believe may have symbolized a deity. However, its human features suggest it more likely represented a queen or noblewoman. An accompanying inscription contains a prayer for healthy offspring. Various other artifacts were also uncovered at the temple, including a shrine, incense burner, bowls and jars. These items were likely used in ritual offerings and religious ceremonies. Sometime after Waren, a ruler named Wernridden ascended the throne of Da'amat. However, little is known about his reign, and he is mentioned only in an inscription commissioned by his descendant RBH. At Adi Galimo in eastern Tigray, an inscription was discovered on a fragmented incense burner. It was commissioned by King RBH, who identifies himself as a member of the Yig tribe. Scholars theorize that this name represents an early form of the term Igazian or Agaze, making it the earliest known reference to the tribe. It is likely that a dynastic shift occurred after the reign of Warren, resulting in the Agaz tribe emerging as the ruling power of Da'amat. He then claims the title of Mukarib of both Da'amat and Saba. Whether this dual authority reflected reality is questionable. Some scholars interpret it as a symbolic confederation, while others argue it was merely titular, with no actual control over both realms. Next, he identifies himself as a descendant of Bunridden, and dedicates the incense burner to Al-Maka. He also references a certain lord of QDR. Though this figure is otherwise unknown, it may have referred to the region of Adi-Gelamo. Finally, the east-west motif returns again this time. It assigns life to the east and descendants to the west, a distinction that makes sense since it reflects the west as representing the descendants of the now mixed Semitized population of Da'amat, which came from the east. Also at Adi-Gelamo, a statue of a woman measuring nearly half a metre was uncovered. Scholars believe it may have represented either a deity or a queen. The last known ruler of Da'amat was El-Em'an, the son of the preceding ruler RBH. His reign is attested by inscriptions discovered at two sites, Enda Cherkos in central Tigray and Adi Akawe in the south. At Enda Cherkos, a large stone block measuring 1.2 metres was discovered bearing the name of King Lemen. He identified himself as a member of the Yigd tribe. As discussed in the previous video, scholars suggest this tribe may represent an early form of the Agazian tribe. El-Lemen proclaims himself ruler of Da'amat and Saba, a claim, like that of his father, which is widely considered questionable and more likely refers to a confederation. He also states that he restored a temple, likely referring to the very structure where the inscribed stone slab once belonged. At Adi Akawe, a fragment of an incense burner was uncovered bearing an inscription that also mentions a king named El-Men. The first part of the text closely mirrors the inscription found at Enda Cherkos, but the second half introduces a previously unattested deity named Sem, to whom the burner may have been dedicated. The inscription then follows the recurring motif of the east and its west, the red and the black, and Saba and its settlers, a formula previously discussed as referencing the mixed Semitic and Cushitic populations of Da'amat. The text concludes with a thanksgiving to several deities, including Habas, Al-Maka, Dat Himyam, Datubadan, and Wad.